My name is Emily Parker, and this is the story I never thought I'd tell. The story of how one terrible mistake nearly destroyed the best thing in my life, and how I learned what true love, forgiveness, and redemption really mean. It started 3 years ago, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting at my office desk, scrolling through spreadsheets and sipping lukewarm coffee. My husband, Daniel, was away on a work trip in Seattle, something that had become all too common lately. We'd been married for 6 years, long enough to fall into routines, long enough to start taking each other for granted. I wasn't unhappy exactly, but I wasn't fulfilled either. We used to talk for hours about dreams, music, and road trips. Now, our conversations were mostly about bills, chores, and schedules. I didn't realize how lonely I'd become until that loneliness turned into a quiet ache. At work, there was a man named Ryan Miller. He was kind, funny, and always had a way of making everyone laugh. We started as coworkers, then casual lunch buddies. It wasn't anything more, until one day, I let it become something else. It wasn't a physical affair, but an emotional one, the kind that creeps up slowly. He'd compliment me, remember things Daniel forgot, and ask about my day like it mattered. It felt nice. It felt like being seen again. But it was wrong, and deep down, I knew it. The moment that changed everything happened one evening after a late meeting. Ryan and I walked to the parking lot together. It was raining lightly, and he offered me his umbrella. When he looked at me, there was something in his eyes, something that said more than words ever could. For a moment, I let myself imagine what it would be like if I hadn't been married. What if this was the life I was supposed to have? But the thought made me sick. I pulled away, muttered a quick goodbye, and drove home trembling. That night, I stared at my wedding ring for a long time. I hadn't done anything physical, but I'd crossed a line in my heart. I cried quietly so Daniel wouldn't hear when he called. When he returned from his trip, I decided I couldn't keep pretending. I told him the truth. Every word, the messages, the lunches, the thoughts I'd had that no married woman should have. He didn't shout, he didn't slam doors, he just stared at me like he didn't recognize who I was. That hurt more than any anger ever could. For days, we barely spoke. I begged him to talk to me, to say anything. He finally said something I'll never forget. Emily, I don't hate you. I just don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. That night, I moved into the guest room. It was the longest, loneliest night of my life. Over the next few weeks, I tried everything: therapy, long letters, heartfelt apologies. Some nights, I sat in my car after work and just cried. I wished I could go back in time and stop myself from ever replying to Ryan's first message. Ryan quit the company soon after. I never saw him again. Maybe that was for the best. Months went by. Daniel still wore his ring, but he was distant. Then one evening, I found him sitting on the porch, staring at the sunset. I sat beside him silently. After a while, he said, "You hurt me, Emily. But I still love you. I just don't know how to trust you again." We started couples therapy. It was awkward and painful at first, but slowly, we began to talk, really talk, for the first time in years. I learned that he'd been feeling alone too. That my silence had hurt him long before my mistake did. We were two people who had forgotten how to reach for each other. 6 months later, Daniel reached for my hand across the dinner table and said, "I think I'm ready to forgive you." Tears spilled down my face before I could even speak. That night, I slept in our bed again. For the first time in months, it felt like home. It wasn't easy after that. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip, it's a choice you make every single day. But we both made that choice. A year later, Daniel surprised me with a weekend getaway to the cabin where we'd spent our honeymoon. He looked at me across the firelight and said, "You're not who you were before, Emily. You're stronger now." "We both are." I smiled through tears and whispered, "I'll never take you for granted again. I'll never forget what it took to get here." Now, when I look back on that dark chapter of my life, I don't see just pain and guilt. I see growth. I see a woman who made a mistake but refused to let it define her. I see a marriage that was broken but rebuilt with something deeper: grace. I would never cheat again, not because of guilt, but because I finally understand what love really is. Love is not about never falling, it's about rising together after you've fallen. Daniel and I still have scars, but they remind us of what we survived. Every day, when he holds my hand, I silently thank him for choosing me again. For giving me a second chance. This is my story, not of betrayal, but of redemption.